Okay. Good morning, everyone. Very good. Thanks for showing up that early. For me, actually, it's also quite early because I had a short night. Thanks for your interest. Let's see if you are still interested in PowerShell remoting after the session. So we will just start right away. A little bit about me. My name is Christian. You can find me on Twitter at T. Why that strange name? Chris, that's for Christian. T for my last name being a teacher in English. So that's the combination, if you would ever ask yourself. Good. I don't like the word agenda, so that is what I prepared for you. We will take a tour and experience the tale of somebody who is trying to get PowerShell remoting running across platform with some ups and some lows, I would say. We will have a beginning as a tale should be. We will have some small technical background. I won't go into too deep into the background because we have more seasoned experts regarding all the protocols and everything. We will see something that I could have also named it Christian ranting about things, but I try to be polite. Not all of hope is lost. I think that is the right thing to look for in the future. And a little bit additionally on that, how to use that. As I said, we will have a start like a real tale start. So, and it's originally like this. So I found a book where PS remoting is really standing in there. So I didn't do anything, right? Okay. Just to make that clear. So some kind of technical background about the two possible ways we have for setting up a PowerShell remoting session. This first one we are looking at here right now is the WSMan implementation for PowerShell remoting. PowerShell remoting is just a layer that is using a tunnel. And this tunnel, in this case, is being brought up by WSMan, the Windows Web Services for Management implementation, which is an industry standard made for getting information about objects from operating systems, printers, whatever. So different organizations came together to found that thing, and in Windows, Microsoft especially, created Windows Remote Management instrumentation, which is the implementation of WS Management or Windows. So, no? Okay. That's what I said. We have more seasoned experts here for the things in the background. So, good. PSRP is the PowerShell remoting protocol, which I said is using WSMan in this implementation. This is what we are using when we do normal PowerShell remoting on Windows. So we have the benefits of being in the box since Windows Vista, even before you could install it. It's easy setup, especially if you're in a domain environment. It has a secure transport mechanism, and the authentication part is also secure because when you're using Kerberos, the normal default authentication, you're ready to go and set up. You can, however, change that to allow basic authentication, which would send over passwords unencrypted, which is not a good idea, so don't do it. And there's a typo in it with PowerShell remoting. In this variant, we also have the benefit of custom configurations where we can connect to. And GIA. Does everybody know what GIA is? Okay, there's some people don't know. GIA is just-in-time administration, which just-enough administration. Sorry, the other one would be JIT. Just-enough administration. It's a possibility to constrain your Windows host to be accessible by people that should not have administrator rights for everything. So if you would have a help desk, for example, they should only be able to restart one service. You could set up a GIA endpoint for that, which would then enable them to remotely connect and only restart that service and nothing else. We also have some drawbacks for the future, I would say. It's only fully functional on Windows, in my experience, and by default, only members of the administrators groups can connect. There are ways to change that, however. The next transport mechanism for PowerShell remoting is Secure Shell, SSH. SSH is an industry-wide and long-implemented standard for connecting things over the network in a secure manner. It is secure because it has a key private. The client and the server both have keys, and you have to trust the key to set up the communication channel in the first place. If you don't trust that key, the communication channel will never be established, and even your authentication will not be sent over the line. So, good. As I said, it's a well-known standard. It's being used in the Linux, Unix networking community since forever, I think. I think the first implementation of OpenSSH was more than 20 years ago. So it's well known and well used throughout the industry. But not in Windows so far, not natively, I would say. We always had the chance to get some tools like PuTTY or other SSH connecting tools, but you could never directly handle SSH natively in Windows, and especially you could not connect to Windows with SSH natively. Since Windows 10 1709 or Server 2016, the OpenSSH client is available as an optional feature in Windows, which is one of the benefits, because suddenly all the Windows clients become SSH remote accessible, which could help a lot of people that have to go to heterogeneous environments and really manage them. Even the authentication part is already encrypted, as I said before. First step is that the client has to trust the server and the other way around, and then the communication starts. And what I always think is a good thing, you can set up PowerShell remoting over SSH so that even users which are non-administrative users can connect via SSH, and they stay in their security context. So if you have a domain account who is just able to log in to somewhere but does not have admin access, you won't have admin access if you're doing the SSH version of PowerShell remoting. There are, however, some drawbacks which I really hope the PowerShell team will remove in the future, and I hope it, because GIA is really a good thing that you should consider wherever possible. So no GIA, no custom configurations, and no support for older Windows versions. That is, depending on how you see it and where you work and what you have to support, this might be a bigger drawback or not. So, setting up Windows with Windows PowerShell, Windows remoting with Windows PowerShell, I think is the configuration part is really done automatically nowadays. What is important? The WinRM service must be running. WinRM quick config, it's the easiest way to set it up because it's doing nearly everything for you in the default configuration. However, if you want to change something, for example, GIA, etc., you have to work on the configurations for WinRM and the WSMan listener in this case. The firewall has to be opened up for port 5985 in the default if you're going through normal HTTP transport. If you have the necessity to use HTTPS, you also have to set up port 5986. Both can be changed if you need to. Since Server 2012, the default setup is you're good to go in a domain or private environment. That has the point that you have to secure it if you set up a system like that, and if you don't want PowerShell remoting to be enabled, which personally I would always want to be enabled, but have to check where connections are enabled from. Okay. I did my demos before because the demo gods, you know. So what we are seeing here is basically only default Windows PowerShell remoting, or Windows PowerShell remoting session. We're getting the credential, we're having a Windows 10 client here, trying to connect to the main controller. As I said, it's a test environment here. Don't do it in practice like this. And we are on the system, right? We are using the transport mechanisms, and here you see I changed the context because I took my credentials from up above. And with that credentials, I tried to log into the domain controller. In this case, it worked because everything was set up automatically. And I can use the domain controller in that session natively. So PowerShell core, setting up PowerShell remoting on Windows with PowerShell core for Windows, because PowerShell core has also different installation packages depending on your operating system, right? Once you set up PowerShell remoting, PowerShell core directly, you don't have to set up anything to move from that machine via PowerShell remoting to other Windows systems. When you have the other way around, when you want to connect to a PowerShell core session, then you have to do some configuration, which we will take a look at. Okay, and this is what I exactly said right now. When you want to have that direction from any Windows PowerShell, any Windows box basically with PowerShell remoting protocol, you have to run that script. It's the install PowerShell remoting script. It's automatically distributed with the client, with a package, and it will set up the WSMan listener and configures the WinRM service to listen to that configuration. As with normal Windows PowerShell, WinRM must be run.
The latest versions of the PowerShell core installer actually have an option to enable remoting during install.
Perfect. Then you don't have to do that anymore. That's great. Thanks. Yeah, and you have to allow the traffic, obviously, to pass the firewall. How does that look? What we are doing here right now is we are in a PowerShell core version 6.2 session right now on the Windows 10 machine, getting that remote setup done, or remoting setup done. It will run automatically, register, restart the service, and be good to go. And then we will switch to, in this case, the domain controller to a Windows PowerShell session, which will be connecting to the PowerShell core session on the Windows 10 client. And how often I tried to record that thing without typos, I did not get it. And one thing we have to do here, which is actually really important. Sorry.
Is that using WinRM?
Sorry?
Is that using WinRM?
Yes, exactly. Okay, what you see here in the first one is the connection which is without the, the script run on the other side. And now we have the session creation, but we have one important thing here, which is the configuration name. Because if you don't put in the configuration name of PowerShell.6, exactly, it would just use the standard way and go to Windows PowerShell. So that is if you have to switch there, or if you have to connect to a PowerShell core endpoint on Windows, put in that configuration.
You have to know which PowerShell core version you're connecting out to.
Currently, it's only PowerShell version 6. I think you can. It depends on the installation path, right?
You get I think you get PowerShell.6, which is the default.
Core default, right?
And then you will also, if you dig deep into it, you'll also find that there's a version specific.
Yeah.
So you'll get a .6.2,
3.7 preview, whatever. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So by the nature, PowerShell core can have different installations side by side. You would be able to connect to different ones. But you also would have, yeah, okay, that's the other part. Okay, just get that done. So we have that session set up to the core version. We have that session set up to the Windows version, and here we have. Don't know if you see it. Configuration name shows you where we are. And now, do you see that? Not really. Let's make the window a little bit smaller. This maybe. So actually what I'm just doing is getting into every session, into both of them, checking the PS version table, because there I see where I am. Right? Basically it. There we are in the Windows PowerShell. Okay. Sure.
So your endpoint, if your endpoint is PowerShell core,
yes,
you can connect to it either way, either a core or a Windows.
Actually, you can connect to both variants, even in parallel. But you have to put in the configuration name then.
Yeah, but what I mean is that if your endpoint is PowerShell core.
With endpoint, you mean the client?
Yes.
The client can make use of both. Yes.
Even though it is just PowerShell core.
Yes. Okay, yeah, that's what I should have said before. And yay, finally, with that one, easy going, working. Not much configuration to do. Okay, now we're getting to a little bit different situation. And I'm really, really interested in the learnings of Richard here. Just chime in really at every time when you think this is stupid what I'm saying, or you make completely different experiences. Okay? Good. In the PowerShell core world, which is not living on Windows, PSRP, PowerShell Remoting Protocol, is making use of the Open Management Infrastructure, OMI, which is also a standard trying to get the whole operating system worlds a little bit closer. And the latest state on the support of that is like from 2 years ago, that the PSRP client part should be delivered within PowerShell core, and the server part should be downloaded and installed manually, more to say, afterwards, after installing OMI. Okay, so I think, okay, should be doable. Give myself a Ubuntu machine, current version 1904, install PSRP, install the OMI, set the trusted host, because I'm not in a domain environment, trusted hosts on the Windows machine, that is, and then everything is good and fine. Well, actually, no, because OMI is not supported on a current version of Ubuntu. First thing ever. So, latest supported version is 18.04. Easy. So we switch to 18.04 and start it again. So we have a new theory. New theory being install OMI on Ubuntu 18.04, install PSRP, set trusted hosts, and everything is fine. Well, no. Ubuntu installation, great. OMI, yes, works. Is installable from the Microsoft repository, but the PSRP client from the Microsoft repository is only supported on Ubuntu 16.04 and not 18.04. So I decided, no, I don't want to go to 16.04 because I don't want to use very old operating systems. I just don't want to do that. Oh, 16.10, sorry, is the latest supported version. Okay, then change in plans. The newer theory. We install OMI on Ubuntu, install PSRP from the repository directly, set the trusted host, connect via basic authentication, and is not a prosper. Well, no, because basic authentication is not supported anymore in PowerShell core on Linux. This is due to a RFC, a request for change in 2018, which has its good reasons. The good reason being, we don't want to send any passwords over clear text. This is totally fine, but the documentation said just use basic authentication. No. Okay, next try. I don't give up that early. As it's about authentication and basic authentication, the newer theory was install OMI, blah, 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 all the things, create a custom certificate on the Windows host, and do the connection. Everything would be fine in theory, balloons, and so on. No. No. I cannot tell you why, but it just didn't work for me. I could not get it to run. Okay, then I thought, what other authentication mechanisms exist in a Windows system? It's, for example, Kerberos. Why not try to use Kerberos? Okay, trying to get Kerberos. Searching the internets and finding a blog post detailing how to install Kerberos and use it to connect via PowerShell remote. Okay. Oh no, I switched, sorry. Doesn't really matter, but okay. Before going to Kerberos, there's a new thing since Ubuntu 16.04, I think it's Kerberos Splego. It's basically a mechanism which provides which helps to protect your credentials. It contains it and sends it over completely encrypted, so it doesn't. Your credentials don't pass the line unencrypted. Okay. So, trying to configure Splego for NTLM authentication, we're switching authentication models here. Just to realize that two ways of configuring Splego on Ubuntu. First one, get Samba installed, configure it, do a whole lot of things and break maybe existing Samba installations or working environments because of authentication methods. So I decided, no, that's not really practical. Then, the next thing, you can configure a file in which you type in your credentials in clear text and just give only yourself read access to it. Which, as a slightly security-minded person, I would say no. Just no. I don't do it that way. So this route also just disappeared for me because I will never implement it like that. Just too insecure. Okay. Next thing. Next try. Kerberos. Because why not? Installing Kerberos, configuring in the configuration, and we are getting a ticket. So I'm getting my Linux client to ask my domain controller to get a ticket for me, which I would then present to the Windows host that I'm really the one who wants to connect. Well, I don't know. It doesn't work for me. I just did not get it to work. So then I searched a bit around, and somewhere hidden in the GitHub issues of PowerShell Core, I found a thing which, on the one hand, made me happy because I'm not too stupid, as it seems. On the other hand, I'm a little bit sad because the documentation states it's working, and it's not. For me, at least. PowerShell Remoting uses OMI only as a bridge for non-Windows platform. Its support of WinRM client is incomplete and problematic. You don't say. My goal is to completely remove OMI as a dependency. And so they also created an RFC to get the dependency on OMI out of that, implement everything that is needed into the WinRM protocol part directly. And when that happens, I think we will have a bright future. But until then, not so, in my opinion. Okay, so sad Joey must also be here. It just doesn't. Wait, I switched back. Too bad. Yeah, so I have to rewrite the tail from PowerShell Prince to PowerShell Loop because only half could be achieved. Okay, next level. When I sent in that presentation, I had a friend who told me, yeah, you can take my MacBook for, doesn't matter, I don't need it at the time. So just go on, submit and do that presentation, and afterwards you give me that back. Well, no. That friend had to use his MacBook suddenly, and I was like, shit. And that could be the place where the presentation was over, but then a friendly thing appeared, like this one. We got a MacBook, which I'm currently testing, and I have 14 days left for it. So thanks, retailer of choice. Good, next part. Trying to get the same thing that did not work on Linux running on macOS. Well, I didn't try it that long because when you read the documentation, okay, OpenSSL is needed, it's already in the books. Could be done, check mark. Basic authentication, we learned, not supported anymore by PowerShell Core on Unix or Linux-based systems. Spnego, not supported by Apple. Christian, no way, I'm out of here. So, sorry, not yet. Good. So then, being really, really frustrated, switching over to the thing that is meant to be the future, trying it with OpenSSH. So what do you have to do on Windows side to use OpenSSH? Installing the optional features, which is done like this, or by clicking, or whatever. I think you all know how to install a feature there. The thing which I think could be changed from the install process itself is that the service should be set to start manual at least. Currently, the SSH service is start type is set to disabled, which doesn't really help to use it. So that could be changed, should be changed in your case if you want to use it like that. Get the service running, and that's it in the first place. So then we have the service, but we need to do some configuration in this case in the sshd config file, because as this is an implementation of the how's it called, the transportable version of OpenSSH, it doesn't hook into the registry or something on Windows. So we are really into file-based configuration here, and the file to use currently is this sshd config, which you have to set to allow password authentication, and then add the PowerShell subsystem, because by now even if you can connect to via SSH to your machine, you won't be able to connect directly to PowerShell. Okay? So what you have to do is, as I said, get password authentication to yes, or set it uncommented. Implement the subsystem. In the documentation, we have this. In the documentation, we have this path set here, and careful, forward slashes, no backward slashes. That's also where we see we have the different source of that tool here. So if you set it like this, it will not work because the OpenSSH implementation has currently a problem with spaces in file names. So the solution here is getting a symbolic link set up and use that symbolic link in that configuration file. In the documentation, it says something that you could do it in PowerShell, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't work like in the documentation because this tool is not supported in PowerShell. There is a PowerShell way, new item type symbolic link. So if you have set that up, you correct your subsystem entry and then make sure port 22 is open, which is normally done by the installation itself, and also that the SSHD is in the path, is in the path variable. Okay. So now what we see here is we are on this Ubuntu system, and what you might see already, we don't use the computer name parameter, we use host name. And with this trait, I cannot talk anymore. When you use host name, it will automatically switch to SSH as a protocol. So we are SSHing to that Windows 10 machine with the username. Should have cut that out. Typing in my Windows password here for DarkWinDuck, which is a normal AD user, and DarkWinDuck has administrative permissions on the Windows machine, and we're there. Okay, we can test with this Linux variable if we are still on Linux. No, we are not. We are on Windows, and as always, we can get the PS version table to check where we are, right? And which version and so on. That was easy compared to other things. Okay. Now we want to do it do it the other way around. We want to connect to Ubuntu from macOS or PowerShell or whatever. So install OpenSSH server and client if they are not already on the box. Configure SSHD config, same thing here, but the subsystem might change. It's not what it's in the documentation, just to reiterate that the documentation could be updated. So your path to PowerShell, which is in this case /opt/snap/ etc. PowerShell, whatever, blah blah blah, and restart the service. Sure.
Is that only reply, not call?
That is always the case. Yeah, I'm assuming that PowerShell core is already installed. Yes. Sorry, I should add in there. Yeah, completely. All the system has PowerShell core installed that use SSH. Okay. No demo here because it will be demoed here. So the same thing for macOS. OpenSSH should be already installed. If not, check to install it with brew, or what's the other package? There's another tool that you could use. You have to enable remote management. This can be done by just clicking the system preferences, which is actually what I did because I'm faster in clicking than in learning if I only have to do it for one time. Configuring SSHD config, the same thing as you would have to do in Ubuntu, being password authentication to yes, and registering the subsystem for it to be available. Restart the service, and then you should be good to go. Let's see. First demo, Windows 10 to macOS via SSH. Let's see. A bit bigger, just. So you see Darwin is really impressed by himself. Okay, we're opening PowerShell Core. We're directly going into the session to think. Getting, again, the hosting parameter.
Quick question with regards to the sort of accounts that can be used on the non-Windows OSs.
Yes.
If the Mac is on the Windows domain.
I did not test that yet, but actually, I think it should be usable because the SSHD config is checking the. No, I don't know yet. I don't know. That's a thing to test. Okay, yeah, we are on the Mac system now, which doesn't have get service because it doesn't have services. But to demonstrate anything, I installed an Edge because why not on the macOS, and my Mac user doesn't like Edge. He wants it to be closed, so we just close it like this from remote. Okay, so we are on the Mac via SSH from a Windows box using PowerShell Core. Okay. Ubuntu to macOS. As I said, Ubuntu 18.04, PowerShell Core installed, SSH configured, but getting outside doesn't even need the SSHD configuration because you're just moving the other direction. So from here to that MacBook, so getting my password in and check if I'm on. So it also works. See, the time I spent to test that all and to have it running, multiple OSs and so on, was way faster than getting to run the other thing in one direction. Same thing here. They don't like Edge on Macs. I don't know why. And the other way around, because we can, right? Starting PowerShell, getting my configuration or getting everything set up. Hostname can be either IP address or hostname depending on your DNS, host file, whatever. Doesn't really matter for SSH in this case. It just has to be able to connect to it, which you can always test with testnet connection or. So, what's wrong here? Password. Plain and simple. I mistyped the password. So, we are there. Works. So we have now Mac to Linux, Linux to Mac, Windows to Mac. The other way around is also working. I did not make a different demo about it because. Okay. This is what I came up with, my little table, which transport mechanisms could be used for which connection. Please take that PSRP in theory here also into consideration. There are blog posts describing nearly everything of that working at a different time span. Yeah, different time spans within the last 2.5 years since PowerShell Core came out, or 3 years ago. So what I would say, if you are solely in a Windows environment and you don't have to use PowerShell Core currently, we know this will change with the next PowerShell release, but currently, no.
I think the statement from the team was that ultimately PowerShell 7 dot something will ship in the box. Don't hold your breath for 7.0.
Yeah, okay, but
it eventually 7 or
Exactly, but
will ship. But personally, this is just my opinion,
yeah,
I'm not expecting it 2 years.
I see it the same, and that's exactly why I made that thing, because as long as you are in that Windows world, in that Windows environment, and you don't have to use PowerShell Core for anything, just stick to the plain old Windows PowerShell model because it just works. Okay, it's long tested, it's fully supported, so just use it. As soon as you have to reach out to other operating systems, go SSH, please, go SSH. Also, yes.
The other thing that I would add to that is if you're remoting to or from a non-domain Windows machine,
Yeah.
use SSH. It's a damn sight easier than setting up certificates or
True.
any of the other mechanisms.
True that. Yeah.
So you have to have core.
You need core.
You need.
It'll give.
Yes.
It'll give you. If you're using 6.2 or 17, it'll give you 99% of what you need. You can access the
I see it the same way. Do it as easy as possible. And this is a very, very good point. You don't have to care about trusted host and certificate and stuff like that. Absolutely right.
Don't use trusted host.
Yeah, whatever. It's so go SSH when possible. And I think this is also what Jeffrey had envisioned in theory like 15 years ago when he talked about PowerShell remoting.
A little bit of background. The story that I got when I was working with Bruce on was that originally they wanted to go SSH, but they got their arms twisted very strongly
Yes.
to use WSMAN.
So there we are, and finally they are changing the direction. Okay. So now that we are using SSH, we can also do the SSH things that you can do on all the other systems, which is, for example, setting up private public key authentication instead of using a password. Which I think is a pretty good idea if you're managing multiple systems in different user configurations, because you can just put in your private key to the host, to the server box, and by doing that, not the private key, the public part of the keys, you're free of the password hassle. There's a little bit of work to do for that. On the Windows host, which we want to try to reach, we have to do a little bit of work, which is go to our sshd conf, uncomment that line because it will point to the authorized keys for an administrator group and so on, and it's a little bit buggy as it seems, so I commented that out, restarted the service afterwards, and I installed a module OpenSSH utils, why you will see. On our macOS or Linux client, we have to create our key pair. We have to upload the public part to the .ssh folder in the user context on the Windows machine, prepare the permissions, and then we're good to go. So this demo is a little bit longer because putting everything into the PowerPoint wouldn't make any sense. So what we are doing is I'm creating the key pair. I'm not giving it a special name, just the default. For the ease of showing it now, I don't give it a key phrase. You could also add a key phrase to your key, so every time it would be used, you would have to type that in. So we created the key, and SSH keygen is the same as everywhere. You could do this on the Windows machine. Exactly the same. And now, do you see that? Or should I get a bit of... So what I do now is I use SSH to directly go into the Windows machine, not in PowerShell. Just CMD, then start PowerShell from there. Could be done different, I know. But what I'm doing now is creating a folder on the Windows machine, .ssh, which is in the user context. So you see it in the path. I'm really typing slow, as you see. In my user path, I'm creating that .ssh folder, which is the default folder where OpenSSH will check for authenticated keys. Okay? So getting out of there, and now using secure copy, because we have SSH running already, using secure copy to copy the public part of my key into the folder that I created already in the last step. So getting the public part, typing very slow, the username, you can do that faster. And now there's one thing that you have to bear in mind now. When you're doing the copy like this, also use the slashes, not the backslashes, right? Don't confuse them. It's really a thing that you could fall over often, I think. So connecting as this user to this PC, to this folder, and copying that file into that file. And what I said before, not the private key, the public part, please. So, okay. Okay, so SSHing into the Windows machine, starting PowerShell, repairing the permissions for the authorized keys file. Be careful. This has to be repaired because by default the OpenSSH implementation checks the permissions on the file, and if too many people have access, it doesn't work. Also, if the inheritance is activated, it doesn't work. So we have this repair authorized key permission commandlet, which is part of the OpenSSH utils module. That's why I installed it before on the Windows system. And now there is a point that is asking you to add SSHD, where is it? This NT service SSHD to the read access of that file. Just don't, because as soon as this account has access, it doesn't work anymore. Documentation says just run this, everything is fine. Oh. Fortunately, there are people finding that out and posting it to Stack Overflow or somewhere. Really, that's without them, we would have been home already. Okay, so we have Windows configured, we have the key, we have repaired the permissions. Checking again. So where are we now? We are there on the Windows machine, just getting out to be sure. And now we are trying to use our key file for entering the session. And I don't know why, from Windows side, I'm completely known to enter -ps tab. In core, you have another option. So, getting the host name in this case, not the DNS name, doesn't matter. Getting the username, and then we have a new parameter that should be used, which is the key file path. As I'm in that folder where the key file is, I just point it there, it will be taken up, and tada, I am there without typing any passwords. Remember, if you set the key passphrase, you will have to type that in, obviously, because that's what it's for. Okay, there we are. What is that? Ah, yeah. If you don't want to use the parameter -key file all the time, you can also add your key to the SSH agent. Pretty easy, pretty straightforward, as everywhere, because it's a standard add key, and you can connect directly by posting the host name and the username, which is really, really, really comparable to what we did in the very first demo, which is just connecting, and it just works. Okay, there we are. Good. Maybe an interesting part, when you're in the Windows world, you have to check security-wise, you have to check who's logging in and so on. You won't find the name of the user logging in, neither the name nor the IP address in your normal security context logs, because SSHD is actually taking over there and doing the login. So you have to take a look for the process that is doing the login. I'm too stupid for talking. Sorry. Have to take a look at the process that is initiating the login. Here you will find the account name that is used, and to see where the connection came from, check the OpenSSH log, event log. It will show you where the login connection came from. Good. Contain the use of PowerShell remoting. I think this is, you don't have to go into detail there. Also, we don't have that much time. Wherever possible in the Windows world, use Gia, because that will really make your environment a lot more secure, I think. You could use WSMan configuration filters for setting IP address things and so on. Honestly, I prefer just using firewall rules. If I need to do something like that, you're shaking your head.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah, so just, it's not good. Use firewall rules. Windows Firewall is obviously really good. You can filter for usernames, you can filter for subnets, ports, whatever. Really, IP addresses. Use the firewall rules. They are easily configurable via group policy. Make it like that, easier. And with SSHD config, you could, for example, define the strength of your authorization ciphers and also theoretically on which IP addresses to listen to. But this is a common thing for SSH since years, so whenever you have to find something there, that should be okay. Questions? Yeah.
Can you specify different port for the PowerShell SSHD if you would for SSH service?
I don't think so, because it depends on on SSH being the ground transportation. No, it should not work. Other questions? Comments?
Yeah, we can't see the screen.
Oh, sorry, all the time, right? But doesn't make it. Okay, then I would say thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hope you learned something.